Okay, folks. Hopefully you can hear me now. Let me know in the chat. Huzzah! Okay, great. Yes. So I have had to sort of at the last minute clutch together a whole bunch of stuff with OBS and YouTube and some other wackiness. So sorry for the late start. Thank you everyone for sticking with me here. Good to see. Let's see, we've got Rune and Storylock and Jason from SE Lock and Key. Thank you all for sticking with me in this. And hopefully you can, yeah, more or less, not quite the way I'd like it to, but it does work, so, you know, yay for that. So I kind of spent, instead of, you know, testing all this and making sure that my microphone hadn't mysteriously broken itself and everything, I was kind of busy doing this. Last few days. Getting all my, building this frame and pegboard and all of that. So I don't really have much planned, and I'm just sort of glad that this stuff is actually working now. So I suppose what we'll do is try to do a live version of the video that I've been working on for the past week or so and just not ever being happy with it. So bear with me a second while I fish out some key blanks that we're going to need. And a couple of tools here. Because what I'm going to try to do is I was tempted. He kind of inspired me along with Jason's new workbench project. And so I actually just finished putting this up a couple hours ago, and I was organizing all of this while I was watching Jason's stream earlier. So what I have is this little furniture lock, which I think I had gotten in a package from Jason. I think this might have been made by Dominion Lock. The only marking I can find on it is the words Toronto, Canada. Sure, upside down there. And very faintly on here, there's a blind code. I'm not sure if the camera's getting that well, but basically this was a thing that came up a few months ago with LPP on Twitter, and the question was, you know, what's this little hole for, and how does that work? And the answer is that it is a thing that allows you to remove, that allows you to remove this core. So I'm going to try to pick this real quick. Thing never wants to cooperate. Every time I try to do this. That's exactly right, Rune. It is a core removal. There we go. So if we turn this, now that we've got this picked, we can turn it 90 degrees, and this little hole is going to line up with another hole in the housing. And also need a set of depth keys. So this is for Fort National wafer locks, and they have 6 different possible depths. So I've got 6 keys here, all cut all the way along to a single depth. And since we have this picked and it's not in a locked position, we can use these keys. I'm going to start with 6, which is the deepest. So that goes in fine, so we know there's nothing deeper than a 6. 5 goes in fine, so probably some 5s in there. And 4 goes most of the way in, but not all the way. So we know that we have at least one 5. 3 goes in just a little bit, stops right near the front, so probably the first one is going to be a 3, and the 2 does not enter at all. So we know we've got a 3 and probably some 5s. Now we're going to take this little bit of bent wire. I hammered the tip flat, and we're going to stick that in there, in that little hole. Find where it lines up, and when we push it all the way down, that is going to disengage the retaining wafer. And then I'm going to with a tool that can pull this out, and we've got the core free. So that little notch in the plug housing needs to line up with another little notch in the top of the housing there. And of course, when we do that, the bolt drops out, but that's just a simple piece of sheet metal with a slot cut in it. And of course, now that we've got this out, we can again use those depth keys and try to read those wafers. So looks like we've got a 1 at the end. No, there probably aren't any 2s. Three in the first position, and it looks like those 3 in the middle are all the same height. So let's try that 5 in there, and all 3 in the middle line up nice and cleanly. So 35551. It's going to be our code. So we get one of our Y11 blanks here, and I'm going to set up the blitz, and we're going to cut that key. And there we go. So, this is shoulder stopped, so you need so we're going to need the shoulder gauge. Got the correct jaw and the correct cutter in there already, thankfully. And at this point, if you're listening on headphones or something, you're probably going to want to turn it down, because I'm going to flip the machine on. So actually, before I do that, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut these with no peaks between the cuts. And there's a little trick to doing that. It's pretty simple. But what you do is, when you cut, you're going to hold the depth. As long as your cut is higher going to a lower cut, you're going to hold the depth and then advance the space instead of pulling the key away entirely, advancing the space, and then just doing plunge cuts. So this is going to actually mill away the peaks between each cut. So there we go. And we said that was 3. So 3. Then the next cut is a 5, so that's going to be deeper. So we're going to hold the depth at 3. And we're going to go down to 5. Now the next 2 cuts are also 5. So keep going. And then the next cut is a 1, so we're going to raise the cutter to 1 depth. And move across. There. There's our key, but got a lot of deburring to do. And there's our finished key. So at this point, you know, we would normally stamp this, but it's not going to matter for right now. And we're going to go back over here and confirm that the key works correctly. Very nice. And at this point, we can reassemble this lock. So let's do that real quick. Stick that bit of poking tool back in there. Slide this most of the way in. And if we get close to the end, you're going to want to make sure that we put the deadbolt, the bolt back in correctly. And that takes a bit of wiggling about. Check our key. Turns nice and smooth and pulls out nice and smooth because there's no peaks there. So usually I would then stamp it with the code number that's on there. so that the customer can know which of their desks or cabinets that goes to. Hi, Jason. Thanks for coming back. So that was the basic video that I've been trying to do for the last week or so, and it has just been one bad take after another. So, got that out of the way. Hopefully LPP will see that, because he had some questions before, although I think we answered it all at the time. Yeah, Rune, an HPC Blitz or similar is a great machine. It's very, very flexible, which is what I like about it. Why I've got this pile of cutting wheels, and actually I've got a box under the workbench here that has another half dozen or so cutting wheels for this, so I can cut all manner of things. And of course this the cutter also tilts, so you can do Medico or Corbin Emhart high security, where you have to do those angled cuts. So basically, as long as you've got a cutting wheel and a code card for what you need to do, you can cut like just about everything, except for those fancy new Sidewinder style keys. But I don't do a lot of automotive most of the time, so that's not such a big deal. Just for you, Jason, I'm going to do that hole poking again, except I'm going to do it with the key this time. So poking tool, Jason's favorite part. There we go. Of course, now I got to put this back together. Now, tricky bit. Pull that out. And I'm going to find out. There we go. All right, let's check up on the chat. Yes, that's right, Rune. You can, in fact, make your own cards. There used to be, I don't know if it's still made, but there used to be a tool called the, I think it was the Little Mac, which had a little set of arms that you would adjust to help you mark off the correct positions for the different depths and spaces. These days, you can actually do it with computer software. I use HPC's code source software most of the time, which combines most of my code books with a whole bunch of giant collection of depth and space data, and also has the ability to create custom depth and space systems, and will then print cards for the Blitz, and also cards for that terrible, terrible pocket decoder that Jason did his review on a bit ago. Actually, somewhere in here, I just found my pocket decoder. And that thing really is terrible. But that's, well, Jason did all better than me, so. Yes, lock codes, locks online. I think it's Codes Online, Locks Online. I forget the name, but they have printable copies of most of the Blackhawk cards, and yeah, you have to be really careful about printing them out exactly right. And I mean, the important thing really is getting this bottom edge and the sides right. You don't have to worry so much about the top. That can be all jagged and messy. And this little triangular cutout doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you've got something here cut away to clear the pivot for the needles on the gauge, it'll work just fine. So, actually, if I get out my, let's back the camera up again, and a bit of space here. I mean, the Little Mac had its use back before like everyone had a computer and a decent printer. You could make your own cards by hand, which, you know, was useful. So, for instance, I was doing some work on someone's Honda recently. Had to make some keys for them, so I printed that out, and then I realized I actually had the factory card. Whole pages that I normally completely ignore because I don't, like I said, I don't really do automotive. But in here, I've got all of my all the cards that either I have made or that I've printed out from software. So Yale large pin, but in the 0.025 step, which you don't see very often, but actually I've got a pin kit for it, so I like to keep that around. Russwin N class, pre-1970. That's for a pile of old master ring cylinders that I have. National letterbox. I had someone that needed new mailbox keys. Yes. Oh yes, and Schlage wafer. This one I had to adjust by hand because that system is a little bit funny, the way the measurements actually work in practice. Mostly because you have to space those, you have to shim those blanks a lot to get them secure in the jaw of the key machine. Let's see. Most of my other tools here and everything are either same stuff you can buy in a hardware store, or cool stuff that Jason has shown just about everyone before, except my little stamp aligner. Do like my stamp aligner. Very handy. Very handy little guy. Only problem with it is the spacing is a little bit limited if you're using something really tiny like my 3/64 inch stamps. But for the larger ones, like the 1/8 inch, they work fine. So that's going to go back on the shelf now. And since we've got Jason here, I'll show my pitiful imitation of his key wall. But this is just the really common stuff. I have got a bunch of less common or restricted stuff in drawers underneath the workbench. It's good enough. Like I said, this is just the really common stuff, and most of the time I've got things like my little... Need to be able to see what the camera's looking at. Got my little box of Sargent XC blanks here. Don't want to leave those just lying around out. Yeah, well, since I started super late and Helpful Lockpicker's on, I'll let you all go check that out. And yes, Jason, we do need to get on to Jeff Moss about his workbench. So I just want to say thank you all for sticking with me through this mess of attempted live streaming. But hey, it actually worked for once. So, you know, cool. Yeah, so thank you all for coming out. And I probably won't be doing this next Saturday because I will probably be at Lockfest. But, you know, keep an eye out as I may try to stream one or two of the talks from Lockfest, if these speakers will allow it. So, thank you all for coming out. Have a great rest of your weekend, and hopefully I'll be back and talking to you all soon.